Last time we looked at King David, and we saw what lowliness means. I'm going to have to speak softer than I did when I called your names because my voice isn't as strong as it used to be. So last time we looked at King David and we learned about lowliness. And we saw a lot of interesting things that have to do with how King David conducted himself, that had to do with this quality of his. And to be lowly is how to be a king. This is one of the things that's usually missed. If a person, every one of us is a king over something, or a queen, you can call it whatever you want. What are we kings and queens of? From the moment we're born. We're kings and queens of this life. The life that you have, you're the king and queen of. I know it doesn't look that way when you have parents. But in the end, parents can only take you so far. And eventually you become responsible for your kingdom. And your kingdom is your life. You're a malchus. Everybody, on a birthday, it's very customary to give a blessing. You should have a long dominion over your kingdom. Ya'arich yamim al mamlachto. I don't know if it's so common in America, but here in Chabad in Israel, this is the way that a lot of children bless their parents. But really, it's true from the moment that you're born. You're the king and queen of this domain. In the end, you're the only one that's responsible for your life. Though it doesn't, again, it may not seem that way, and a lot of people don't get this until they're in their 40s or 50s or 60s even. But you're a king. And the most important quality that a king needs in order to rule a kingdom is lowliness. That's the inner quality of malchus. To be a king is first of all to be lowly of nature. Va'iti shafal be'enai, as King David said, I'll be lowly in my own eyes. You don't have to share it with anybody. You don't have to tell somebody else. David there had to answer Michal, his wife. But this is something between you and yourself. So we saw some of the traits that come with lowliness. First of all, that he can admit a mistake. Why is it so hard to admit mistakes? Why is it so hard for people to say, I made a mistake? Because what's my self-image? If I'm a king, I'm supposed to be perfect. Again, I don't have to say it to somebody else, I made a mistake. You don't have to necessarily tell people. Sometimes you do, but you don't have to tell them about everything that you did wrong. But if you're able to free yourself of your self-image, then you can be frank with yourself, honest with yourself, and say, I made a mistake here. And that allows you, like we said last time, not to be a victim of circumstances. The main thing that a king has to be is free. There's a pasuk in Chazkel that says, Ashraich eretz shemalkech ben chorim. Joy is to the land whose king is a free man. And the Alter Rebbe has a lot about this, and the Milner Rebbe has a long mimer in Biurei Zohar on it. But the short and long of it is that you're free of having, in a sense, to live up to a certain image. You're free. Now, we haven't talked about this. We'll talk about it sometime in the future. There is a positive self-image also. It's not just that every self-image is negative. But usually, the self-image that we have, that we need to uphold, that we feel that we need to prove to everybody, prove to ourselves that we're this and that, which started with, again, our parents telling us what a beautiful drawing and so on and so forth, and getting all this praise. That self-image, we have to fight our whole lives. Because it freezes us. It forces us to be something and not who we are. And I'm not talking here about whether you're, you know what, we'll even go that far. When we say, Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu Lefanecha, So that's breaking the self-image. What's a self-image? How could I sin? How could I do a chait? So either we don't mean it when we say it, or if we really mean it, so that's breaking self-image. It's saying, I'm prone to do averos. A lot of them. This is the hardest thing, by the way, to get over. Because we're taught all the time that we're supposed to be perfect. That's how we're taught. You're not supposed to do an avera. But supposed to is very different than capable of. But we are capable of everything. There's I don't think I mentioned this last time. There's a mimer from the Tzemach Tzedek. He asks a very simple question. Why is it that at the revelation at Mount Sinai, it's the highest level we ever reached? Every single one of us had nevuah, prophecy, at the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. For a moment, but we had it. We all heard Hashem speak, just like Moshe did. What would you expect Hashem to tell us at the highest moment of life, ever? What would you expect Him to reveal? What should have been His words? Anochi Hashem Elokecha. That makes sense. Lo yihu lecha elokim achrim al panai. Not to have other gods, I understand. And then he goes on, don't say Hashem's name in vain. Shabbos, I understand. Respect your parents, I understand. The whole right side of the luchos, I understand. But then what does he tell us? Wham. Lo tignov. Lo tirtzach. Lo tinaf. Don't murder. Don't steal a human being. Make them into a slave. Don't commit adultery. The worst possible, not to murder? I'm here at the level of Moshe Rabbeinu and you're telling me not to murder? That's all you could tell. You couldn't find a higher truth to tell me? It's not shaykh to me. What are you talking about? It says at Tzemach Tzedek, the point of that is that know that even at the level of prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu, you still have your nefesh behemis. You still have your animal soul. And it's still capable of all the worst things that you can dream of. Nothing changed. Because the animal soul only works well when it's subjected by the divine soul, when it's in control. But if you lose control, you're capable of everything. Now the worst thing is, then when we do something wrong, so right away, can't be. I didn't do that. There's no way I did that. We can't come to terms with the fact that we did something. But it's the truth. That's how a human being is built. We're capable of ascending to the highest place, and at the same time, we can also go down to the lowest place. And there's a contradiction in it, but a human being is a contradiction. There's an animal soul, and there's a divine soul. And we carry them both inside. We're a contradiction. We're walking contradiction. What other contradictions do we have in us? That we're physical, and at the same time we're also spiritual. We have other contradictions. There's a lot of contradictions in the person. Many of them. But the self-image is one of the things that forces us, as it were, to freeze who we are and not accept it. Not accept who we really are. And again, it doesn't mean that I have to strive to be my worst possible self. But if that's what happens to me, I have to be able to admit it. But that's what I'm like also. I'm also this. I may not be like this all the time, but I'm certainly capable of being like this. And being the worst possible me that I can. So yeah, I want to work on being the most I can, but I have to not fall into this state of not being able to see what I really am like. Because if I can't see who I am, nobody can help me already. If I can't see my problems, then nothing can help me already. Okay, so that's the lowliness really. The lowliness is to know, and David the Melech knew this, And he said this many times in Tehillim. I don't know if anybody can think of another verse, but there's many of them. If you say Tehillim normally, regularly, one of the famous ones is Chatati Negdi Tamid. My sins are always in front of me. He always carried his chait in front of him. He never let go of it for a moment. He said there was two tmidim. Tmidim were the korbanos that were brought, the sacrifices that were brought daily in the Beis Hamikdash. Tamid echad baboker, tamid echad ben ha'arbaim. One, what's it called? Kivis. You say kivis. Sheep in the morning and one in the afternoon. So David HaMelech also had two tmidim. There was, right? What were his two tmidim? Shiviti Hashem lenigdi tamid. I place Havaya in front of me always. And Chatati negdi tamid. And my sins are always in front of me also. Not to be afraid of them. Because that's how a human being is, says the Baal Shem Tov. There's a pasuk that says, Adam ein tzadik ba'aretz asher yaseh tov velo yichta. There is no man who's a tzaddik on the earth who does only good and doesn't sin. But said the Baal Shem Tov, don't make a mistake. It doesn't say he does only good but doesn't sin. It says, Asher yaseh tov velo yichta. In the same breath. He does good and at the same time he sins. What's his sin? This is what we're going to learn about today. I do a mitzvah. I came here to give a shir. What's my sin? Right away, the moment I'm here. You can all guess. What's my avera? Right away. What? Baal avera, right in front of you. What am I doing wrong? Talking too much. That's for sure. I said that. I don't know. Somebody said that. What's the avera right away?
Can I say it? But like I don't want to.
No, go ahead.
Talking to women.
Nah.
Oh. I didn't know. Like you're saying it's right in front of us.
It's much worse than that. Much worse. I become. Right.
What did you say?
She saw right away from my hand, the way my hand moved. I become a Baal Gaiva. Baal Gaiva is I become arrogant. Because I'm sitting here behind the whatever, and I'm telling you. Why am I telling you? It doesn't matter. The moment I have this position, it churns into arrogance, whether I like it or not. I can't stop it. It's not like I have control over a natural human instinct, which is that the moment that you're sitting in front of people and saying something that they're listening to, you immediately are filled with feelings of self-importance.
Even a tzaddik gets those feelings?
Yeah, even a tzaddik. What did the Baal Shem Tov teach? What did the Baal Shem Tov do in order to help the tzaddikim? He taught them a technique, which I didn't do. You'll see that I didn't do it today. He taught them a technique which he spent. If you ever watch the Rebbe, you'll see him doing it all the time. Which is that before he speaks, he's silent. We'll learn a lot about this. It's called submission, separation, sweetening. The three-part thing that you do with your ego every time that you go to do something good, especially speaking before people. That first of all, you have to be silent. After you're silent, by the way, that was how the Maggid taught the Chassidim, his Chassidim, how to recognize a true Rebbe. He said, if you ask him a question and he immediately answers, he's not a real Rebbe. But if you ask him a question and he's first silent, it's not because he doesn't know the answer. He knows the answer right away. What's he doing? Why is he silent? Because he needs to first of all submit the arrogance. I have an answer. Where did the answer come from? Who gave me this answer? My genius? All the generations of Torah before me. They gave me the answer. Hashem gave me the answer. So this is why I have to submit my arrogance. Submit means control it. Stamp it down. Yeah?
I have a question. So right now we're saying that it's an avera to be very arrogant. But is it just as bad of an avera to have a very low self-esteem and a very low self-image? Or
I don't know if it's an avera then, but it's certainly
It's not an Averis.
but it's certainly going to put you down enough that you won't do anything good. Meaning it can prevent you from doing good things. We'll talk about that later also. Rav Shem Tov also gave a tremendous piece of advice for that. What happens when you have low self-esteem. But after the submission comes the separation. And the separation is to cut it out. Meaning to cut out the klipa. To cut out that feeling. And it's not just to, first of all, control it. But it's also to cut it out, to remove it from yourself.
To remove what?
The arrogance. The feeling of importance.
But isn't that what you do when you submit?
No, when you submit, you first of all have to. It's like a dog. You first have to put it on a leash, then you can take it away. But you first have to control it. That's the submission. And the separation is put it away, and not only put it away, but instead you have to identify with something else. And that's a lot of what we'll learn about today. You have to identify with your divine part, which is not you. And then the third part is the sweetening, that's the speaking part. And then you can speak. Once you've cut out the klipa, once you've cut out this feeling of arrogance, that's when you can begin to speak. Yeah?
Do you believe that this level of bittul is actually attainable?
Oh yes. Not only do I believe it's attainable, it's not something that, let me explain what I mean by attainable. It's not like something that becomes your nature, but it becomes your second nature. Meaning, it's not like automatically you will always have this bittul. And you're right to call it bittul. Did I call it that, or you just came up with that? You came up with that. That's exactly what bittul is. So we'll explain a lot more today. But bittul means not necessarily that I'm bittul. It's very rare to find somebody who's bittul. Well, there's a good joke about it. You know the joke about it? This is exactly for you. Exactly for your age and your situation and so on. There's a guy in a yeshiva, and he goes out with a few girls on a shidduch, and it doesn't work out. So his mashpia has a tete-a-tete. He has a head-to-head with him, like a conversation. And he says to him, "Look, I got reports back that you were very, very arrogant. That's why they didn't want to, right? Women are much more sensitive to arrogance in a guy than guys are. Guys like it. But a girl who wants to get married with somebody, she doesn't want to get married with somebody who's arrogant. This is what she needs that headache for. So, I got reports back that you were very arrogant." He says, "What can I do? You know, I'm the biggest Eloi here. I learned the most, and I'm this, and I'm that." He says, "Yeah, but you should also learn the midah of," he called it, humility, of anava. Okay, so the guy's a serious guy. He goes, he opens up Orchos Tzadikim, and he opens up Aliyos de Rabbeinu Yonah, and he opens up all the Musars for him. And he learns seriously for half a year. And then he comes to his mashpia, and he says, "I'm ready to go out again." He says, "Okay, you know, he's a serious guy." So he has another shidduch, and then again it doesn't work out. So the mashpia gets a report that he was really, really arrogant. So he doesn't understand what happened. So he comes to him and he says, "I don't understand. I saw you seriously learning for half a year about anava, how to be humble. What happened?" He says, "What? Before I was only an ilui, and I davened, and I was serious in this. Now I'm also a nanav." Now he's also a nanav. Now he's also humble. He's so much more than he was before. Yeah? So, it's very uncommon to find somebody. Why do we go in this direction? Because it's very uncommon to find somebody who's naturally, who, without even thinking about it, removes the arrogance from himself. It's very uncommon. But what is common and is attainable by every single human being is second nature bittul. Second nature means that I catch myself. That it's second nature for me every time that I feel that something is happening inside, that I'm feeling arrogance, I'm feeling importance, self-importance, self-aggrandizement. then I can cut it out. Then I can do this process. That's possible for everybody. And more importantly, that if somebody comes to me and says, look, you were arrogant, chatati avitu pashati. I have a great story about this.
Is that
something?
Tell someone that they're arrogant?
What, that I was arrogant, just saying.
No, isn't it arrogant to tell someone that they're arrogant?
Isn't it arrogant to sound? Okay. I want to say something, and then when I'm thinking about what the repercussions of this will be.
Oh.
I'm wondering if I can say it in a way that won't give you the wrong impression. But when you care about somebody enough, and this usually happens, unfortunately, you know what? Here's how I can say it. I said before that women are more sensitive to arrogance than men are. And the place that they're most sensitive to it is in marriage. I don't know if it's because there's an innate, call it, propensity to be aware of it because there's an understanding inside there's something so wrong with it. I don't know where it comes from exactly. I have all kinds of theories about it. But most marriages fall apart because at some point the woman tells the husband, the wife tells the husband what he's really like.
Is this from Gemara?
It's from a lot of experience of the Gemara and psychology books and whatever you want. And then you get a name for it, right? Women get this name for it, which is a terrible name. I won't even mention it. But a lot of men see it that way. She becomes you can fill it in yourselves. But here's the thing, that if you become aware of it, that's why I'm saying this too, if you become aware that you have a sensitivity to it, it's not wrong to be sensitive to it. The question is how you say it. And it's very hard to tell men that they're really arrogant. It's really hard to tell them that they're full of themselves. It's very hard for a wife to say this to her husband, but at some point she breaks and she does.
Doesn't that make her a little bit full of herself?
Doesn't it make it?
No, so that's what she said. But what I want to argue is that she's not saying it because she wants to be arrogant over him, but rather it really pains her that he is single-handedly, almost single-handedly ruining their relationship because of it. It doesn't mean that you need two to fight. You can't have, nobody can fight with themselves, and if they do, they have to be put away somewhere, right? So people always fight in pairs at least. But the cornerstone of all the relationships is that you know that I care for you enough that I'm willing to say certain things. And it comes out of care, not out of an attempt to show you that I'm better than you. Although sometimes that's when it comes out, when there's no other choice. When it comes out in the worst possible time. So really, I don't know what they teach today in marriage preparation because I don't do it anymore. But the main thing that I worked with guys on is to be able to say two words. Right. Those two words. Which is the same thing as I'm wrong, which is the same thing as I made a mistake, which is the same thing I'm arrogant. All these things are the same thing. Now, I'm talking about guys, but you can learn about yourself also. Because even if it's not the major trait that women have, because today we live in a society that's much more equal, so women pick it up pretty quickly. That there's such a thing. That I can be full of myself. It used to not be such a big issue, but it's becoming more and more of an issue. So the Maggid used to say that if you want to find a real Rebbe, you have to find somebody who, before he answers, he is silent. You might know that there's this famous story about the Alter Rebbe, that a Misnagid once came in and he said, you know what's wrong with you Chassidim? If you're such believers in the fact that all the neshamos are chelik eloka mimal, that everybody's a part of the divine, part of Hashem, why is it that the Rebbe dresses in different clothing than the rest of the Chassidim? And if you know, back then, the Alter Rebbe, the picture that we have of him is apparently when he was in jail. So he was wearing a black coat. But he dressed like the Tzemach Tzedek when he was in his home. He had white garments, because all the early Chassidim, the Rebbe, our Rebbe already didn't, but all the generations until the Friediger Rebbe, maybe the Rashab, I don't know if the Rashab had or didn't have, but all the generations had that the Rebbe would dress in white garments. And it's a big deal in Kabbalah to have 8 white garments, and like the Kohen, whatever. So he said to him, why is it that the Rebbe dresses differently than the Chassidim? What was the Alter Rebbe's answer? The Middle Rebbe was there, so he saw the whole exchange. And he said, the Alter Rebbe didn't answer him. What did he do? Anybody know the story? Put his head down. For a couple of, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever it was. Then he got up and he said, in the same way that you dress the head differently than you dress the body, the head of the Chassidim has to be dressed differently than the rest of the Chassidim. You don't take your shirt and you pull it over your face. You don't wear one tunic over everything. Rather, you have your clothing for your body, and you have a different garment for your head, the hat, the head covering. In the same way, the Rebbe is dressed differently than the Chassidim. The Chassidim are like the body, the Rebbe is like the head. When it's not get accepted, it didn't accept it, doesn't matter. When the whole thing was over, his son, the Middle Rebbe, asked him, Rebbe, why did you put your head down? You knew the answer right away. Why did you put your head down? He said something amazing. He said, you don't understand. When he came and he said this to me, he wasn't asking a question, theoretical question up there in the air, about some theoretical Rebbe. He's telling me that I'm arrogant. It doesn't matter that he's wrong. If he's coming and telling me, says the Alter Rebbe, that I shouldn't be dressed differently than the Chassidim, the meaning is that in the Shemayim they're telling me that I am arrogant over my Chassidim. So the first reaction is achna, submission, putting his head down. Vidui, chatati aviti pashati. I'm not okay. And then when I got back up, I waited and then I told him the answer. He did the whole process. Let me tell you how this process changes the world. I only have one example. I don't know if you'll have more examples in your life than I have. I probably have more, but I don't remember them. There's one that I always tell. And in a certain sense, Hashem doesn't do things for you all the time. He doesn't for you one time very dramatically, and then you need to learn from that. That even if the change is not so dramatic in the next time that you do it, it's still happening, even if you can't see it. So what am I talking about? Also, it's very mysterious. I was in the United States in 2003, which was 2 years, or like a year and a half after 9/11. And I hadn't been in the United States for like 3 years. And I don't know, none of you know, maybe you've heard about this. This is like, from prehistory, when the dinosaurs were still roaming the earth. It used to be that in America, you could go up to the plane. Do you know that? If you were coming to the airport, like to see somebody off, or to greet them, you went through the security, like the gate with there was always those gates for metal detectors. But once you went through it, you could escort somebody on the plane, literally. That's how I grew up in America. In the 70s, that's the way it was. In the 80s, it was still that way. I don't know, somewhere in the 90s, they changed it that you can't get on the plane, but you can still escort them all the way to the gate. And when somebody debarked, got off the plane, deplaned, whatever, you could go to the gate to greet them. Today, you can't get near the terminal. You can't. That changed after 9/11 because they realized, in Israel it was always this way, you couldn't get anywhere near anything. But then in America, after 9/11, they realized that they had security all wrong. So there were a lot of changes that were made. One of them was, and I didn't know this, that if you're taking an international flight, you have to be at the airport at least an hour before. I was used to the fact that you could run to the gate, literally. Even if you didn't have a boarding card, you could get it at the gate, like as you were walking in. That's how I remembered America. So in 2003 was the first time I was there after 9/11. And I went with my Rav, and we were in Los Angeles for 2 weeks, and I stayed a little bit after to close everything up. And I came to the airport, and I was there at least, I thought I was there with plenty of time to spare to go back there to Israel. And I get to the counter, and they take my ticket, and he looks at it, and he runs it, and he says, looks at me. I'm sorry, you can't fly today. Why? The flight was canceled? What's going on? He says, no, you're here too late. What are you talking about? He says, you have to be here an hour before. I was there 55 minutes. Okay. So for me, that was like, I never heard of this thing of an hour. So I said, are you sure that I didn't talk like that, but you get the idea. So I have to hide something. So I say to him, the guy at the counter, when can you put me on a flight to Israel? So it was going from Los Angeles to Newark to Tel Aviv. So he looks and he says, and he goes through it, his computer screen is taking like his own sweet time, and he says, in 2 weeks. Like, what? I had just been married, and my first son had been born, and my wife was pregnant again, and he's telling me 2 weeks, and already I've been in America for 2 weeks. It was like shooting me in the head. Might as well shoot. I didn't know what to do. So I said, obviously I won't get on this flight. And I'm cursing him under my breath, of course, and all these things. And so there used to not be cell phones. I don't know if you remember those. There was such a time. There were no cell phones. So there were batteries of public phones on a wall. So I started walking. It was really, really far. The whole terminal I had to walk. And I get to the phones, and I start fishing money out of my. We used to actually put money into the thing. And I tried to call my wife, and I talked to her, and I told her the situation, and I tried to call the travel agent. It was actually such a thing also back then. So I reached the travel agent. I tried to reach her, and I can't get through. I called my wife back, said, maybe you'll try. There must be an earlier flight, and it can't be that I have to be here for two more weeks. And then I suddenly realized, what am I doing? I didn't do the first thing. If somebody tells you, look, you can't go, do you think they know your name and they care about you and they're out to get you? They don't know who you are. Who told them to tell? Who made this situation? Well, obviously I came late, but I didn't even know. So, who made this situation that is so impossible for me now? Where I feel that my heart is sunk and I have to be here for 2 more weeks after I've been here. I don't want to be here. I want to be home. Who did that? Hashem did that. What did he do that for? To give you a pat on the back? He did that to you because you have something wrong with you. Something's wrong. I don't know what it is. I can guess. It suddenly hit me. What am I doing? I'm trying to fix the situation. You have to fix the situation, that's for sure. You have to do something to fix it. But you can't just go and fix it. Because the situation is such that you have to fix the basic thing, which is you. Now, how do you fix yourself? What do you do to fix yourself? 3 words. In Hebrew. Chatati, aviti, pashati. I'm wrong. I don't know what it is yet, but I know I'm wrong. Put your head down. Between you and Hashem. Nobody has to hear. Nobody has to know.
Why does it have to be that you're wrong? It could be that Hashem had other plans for you. That's probably
That's
why.
also true.
So why do we have to
But it's not what I planned. It's not what I planned. I feel broken. If something is breaking me, something feels like it's breaking me, something has criticized me, instead of saying, oh, shut up. Shut up. I don't have to say this to the person. He's only a messenger. The person who's criticizing me is just a messenger, that's all. The message is coming from somewhere else. And before that place, I can't play a role. I have to be who I really am. And that place is always where truth is. So I did that. Literally, I did that. I told my wife, I'll get back to you. I went off to the corner, and I said vidui. I didn't finish the vidui. I finished the pashati, I think. And I'm looking around, I don't know why, and I see at the end of the long terminal, somebody jumping up like this. So I'm really short-sighted. So I do this, and I'm trying to see what is. Oh, it's that guy who told me I can't fly for another 2 weeks. And he's jumping up and down, and he's calling me. So I go running back. And he says, come here. He's yelling at me, come back. And he gets behind the counter. He says, you can fly. I said, what? What happened? You said I wasn't here an hour before. Well, what changed? How can you change time? I can't be here. If I was 55 minutes and you're like a yek and it's not an hour, what can I do? Well, you suddenly decide to be lenient? I actually asked him, what an idiot. I'm glad I asked him. So he tells me, there's snow in Newark, and the flight is delayed. So technically, you were here an hour and 30 minutes before the scheduled departure, the new scheduled departure. That's my story. It's not amazing. The world didn't move, but my world moved. And for me, that was what we call a binyanav. That was a principle. You see it one time, you see this change in reality. One time, you realize that this is how it works. That if you're not quick to reject the criticism, and the criticism can come in a million ways, if you're willing to accept it for a moment, to live in it, to stand in it, not to be afraid of it, not to be a victim. When you're a victim, you shun the criticism because you can't handle it. But really, if you're willing to admit that you're not perfect, then you can carry almost anything. You can actually carry things that you wouldn't believe that you can carry. You can hear things about yourself and not fall apart. You can have things done to you and not fall apart. It doesn't mean that you don't need to fix the situation afterwards. You do need to fix it. My plan after the vidui was, after saying Chatati Aviti Pashati, my plan was that I'm going to call the travel agent and try to get an earlier flight. That didn't change. But it turned out I didn't have to do it. It was done for me. Yeah.
Every time you see something bad that happens, you have to assume it's because you sinned.
Again, the word sin is really it's almost like a 4-letter word. I'm not okay. I mean, I don't have to actually sin and do something in particular. Because I just said that even when I do good things, I'm prideful because of it. And Hashem says about prideful, you know what he says about somebody who's prideful. Somebody who has gaiva. Hashem says, I can't dwell in the same place with them. This is one of the reasons why we wear a head covering, because that's supposed to remind us that that if you want Hashem to dwell on you, you have to...
Wouldn't you think that maybe like it would be hashgacha pratis? Like,
Yeah, of course. But that's the Ashgacha.
Aren't we not supposed to think that everything we do is a punishment?
Chaz v'shalom, it's not a punishment.
So what are you saying it is?
It's a criticism. Criticism is not the same thing as a punishment. In fact, there are probably no punishments really. Hashem doesn't really punish people. He wakes them up.
Isn't that just a really negative way of living life?
Why?
To think that everything that's bad that's happening is
He's talking about you. You could say it's a very conceited way of living life, because actually everything that's happening around me is actually connected to me.
but why can't you just think of it as like hashgacha pratis?
It is. That's what I just said. It's very Ashgacha pratis.
But then why does that have to be like, oh, you did wrong, so everything's going wrong?
Again, because what did it make? Like, what was the reaction that I had? It wasn't a reaction of joy and glee and hearing that I have 2 more weeks. There are people who would have heard that and would have said, "Whew, I really didn't want to go back home." But that wasn't my reaction. My reaction was like somebody had just chopped my feet off. Like I was broken.
Blame yourself is just really...
I'm not blaming myself. It's not the same thing.
Yourself, but like to
so
I
I'm
have-
saying vidai. Yeah,
it's
why?
kind of taking you away from the whole hashgacha pratis idea.
Why? It's very much Ashgacha pratis.
Because of what I did and she...
What does Ashgacha pratis mean? It means that the world is reacting to you. Hashem is reacting to you.
I thought it's that Hashem has a plan and we're just...
Of course he has a plan. And the moment later, after you say, something was wrong with me, something is wrong with me, I did something wrong, whatever it is, you can suddenly accept the plan. But if all you feel is that I've just been criticized, I've just been hurt, then it's very hard to go into the second stage, which is to accept what I called separation, which is that there is something divine here.
How can you not be hurt or like criticized if something like bad is happening to you?
You have to. That's what I just said.
I
You
don't
can't
understand
ignore it.
this. Like each time something doesn't go your way, you're just meant to say vidai and whatever. And just be
No. I didn't say that because you say vidui. I said that in the beginning. I don't believe that because I say vidui, then suddenly everything will transform and change for the better. But I know that it's a necessary step. It could be that the next step is mine, that I now have to do something. It could be that, like in this case, it'll change by itself. It could be that I just need to accept it.
But I don't think that, like, each time a situation doesn't go your way, that your immediate response should be, oh my gosh, it's me, like, I blame myself and whatever. Like, basically do that only in certain situations where you actually think you did something wrong. But I think that, like, if something doesn't work out, then you should just, in your head, be like, oh, it's all hashgacha pratis, and Hashem has a plan for me.
That's 100% true also. But if your reaction is just, if you're able to just say this, like you just said, very calmly,
Obviously, it wouldn't be so calm.
I don't
because
care.
It's annoying.
Said
but,
it, but-
like, in the back of my head, it'd be like, okay, fine, like, it's all up to Hashem. And, like,
Back
okay,
of your
it's
head is
gonna
one
work
thing.
out. No matter what happens,
No.
I'm gonna live tomorrow.
right? But that's the second stage.
But bad things also happen to good people.
Of course.
So like, how is it like someone could be such a good person? How is it that they've done wrong?
Can I say something about that topic?
Yeah, in a second.
Okay.
I know I'm done.
No,
Anyway,
settle.
bring up that.
So how can
Saying,
something...
Yeah, how's it possible that all these bad things happen to good people and like it's not like they've sinned?
Okay. Now what's the main difference between what I described and what you just said? Let's see if you can...
You were saying how sometimes you could do the bad and things might
And
not
you're
be
talking about
good people.
somebody else.
Uh,
Don't Don't ever use this. Another story, great one. This is really great. Because I teach this, I've been teaching this for 25 years or whatever. So my son, who is now 18, so he heard this from the day he was born. He never got a good review of a picture. I can promise you. That's why he's not an artist, by the way. But he heard. So the story is, you're gonna have to bring this next time. So please don't forget. After Yom Kippur, I think we have a class. So, huh?
What's the class called? The extra one?
Chassidic psychology. So wait, just the story. No, they'll print for you. He was sitting. He was 4 years old, and he was sitting with a friend in the kitchen. I saw this. This is unbelievable. Sitting with there are 2 4-year-olds, and my wife gives each one a cookie or 2 cookies. I don't remember what it was. And he takes from his friend one of the cookies. So now he has 3, and the other one and his friend has 1. So the friend started crying. Maybe they were 3 years old, whatever it was. What does he say to him? His name, the other kid's name was, wow, I used to remember what his name was. He says to him, whatever his name is, don't cry. Everything Hashem does is for the best. So with a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, that's funny. With an adult, what is that called? Abuse. Today they call it abuse. It's called condescension. It's called patronizing. It's a categorical mistake. You can never, that was the mistake that Job's friends did with him, and why Hashem got very angry at them. Because they kept telling him, Job, you know what's wrong? You know why you're suffering? Why? You did something wrong. You can never say this about somebody else. You can only ask this question and use this regarding yourself. The question, why do bad things happen to good people, has a certain answer. The answer is not at all because they did something wrong. It might be the truth, but you can't answer that answer. You have to be the advocate for somebody else. You have to see them in a positive light. There's a rabbi, a Lubavitcher in Australia. Who said they're from Australia? His name is Aaron Mas?
Sydney?
Sydney?
Sydney, yeah.
He wrote an incredible piece. You should read it. Look for it. And he says he went to a hospital or somewhere and he sees all these people suffering. And he basically restated the Rebbe's response many times, but he said it so well. Why do other people suffer? So that you do what? So that we do what? So that you cry out that it hurts you. I don't know why he's suffering. I don't know what he did or didn't do. But I know what I have to do. What do I have to do? Make sure my heart isn't off. Make sure my heart is made out of flesh and blood. Make sure that I feel their pain. That's about the other person. About myself, chatati avitu pashati. Everything that happens to me, Hashem, I'm the arrogant one. I deserve it, and so on. And now let's move forward. Move forward. There's a plan. There's a way to get out of this. This is all for the best in the end. But the first step has to be one of lowliness. I must have done something wrong. Says David, Ech yavo aron Hashem elai. How can the ark of God come to me? I'm not worthy of it. Now, before we end, you wanted to say something, Dubo.
Oh, hi. Oh, I wanted to say that. I a couple years ago, I was really interested in this topic of what Leah asked, why bad things happen to good people. And there's actually a book.
Terrible book. Don't read it.
Okay. Well, I read it, and it's actually a great book. I really thought it was good. I don't know. And basically, what I took from the book was like, so the cover said like why bad things happen to good people. On the side it says don't. So it's like a little like twist. So what I got from the book is
Oh, somebody wrote another book, not the original one.
I don't know.
If it has "don't" in the title, it's not the original book.
Show you the cover on my
It's not the
phone,
original
like-
book. Show it to me. Send it to me by WhatsApp.
Okay, I'll send it to Izzy. She'll send it to you. Basically, what I took from the book is that like it's all about your perspective. It's not like you said,
Listen.
as we all know, it's like everything happens for a reason and everything's good. Hashem is only good, and obviously that's like really hard. Sometimes hard to understand. Like that lady today that was speaking. We can say that when she was in that pit and like the black people were really hurting her. When you look at later on how, like if she wasn't in that situation, she wouldn't have been from. So you see like everything. Maybe at the moment it isn't good, but later on it like really is all. For
You need
them.
perspective.
Yeah. Also, we don't know Hashem's plan. Like Hashem has the map. We don't.
So I'm sorry about saying that before, because there's a book that this is an answer to. What you read is an answer to a book called "Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People?" It was written by a Reform rabbi whose name is, right now I can't remember, who had a child who had a terrible disease, the disease where you get old very quickly, and they usually die at age 12 or 13. And his answer was a terrible answer.
Oh, so yeah, I'm not talking
So
about
this
that.
was an answer to that book. Right. I'm old, so I only remember what was in the 70s. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, so we have to end. Mar Chasima Tova to everybody.